Welcome everyone to this future-proof container terminal episode. Today we got a really interesting guest, John Lund, and I will define why interesting. And it's because he has been working in the industry for more than 10 years and in different companies, different roles, but especially these days as VP for Sales and Marketing on Visy Oy, a well-known company offering gate automation systems in our industry, and especially these days that we're hearing more and more about digital transformation, process automation, equipment automation. It will be great to hear your thoughts, lessons learned, and the challenges you're currently facing in our industry. So with that being said, John, welcome to the virtual stage.
Cool. Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here. You've been doing some great work over the past year with social media, especially on LinkedIn. So I'm glad we finally could connect and have this podcast together.
Great, John. So yes, as you have seen, the plan for today is that we have been putting together some questions from our side, from your side, and the plan is go through them. Feel free to share your thoughts, and if this is okay for you, let's go for it.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Great. So John, for those who haven't got the chance to meet you yet or work together with you in any project, could you share a little bit more about who is John?
Yeah, so my name is John Lund. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director for Visy. I'm located here in beautiful Tampere, Finland, where we have winter about 10 months out of the year, and then we have something else for the other 2 months. I've been in the industry since like 2005. So I've worked with Visy, I've worked with Identech, an RFID company from Austria. I've also done some legal work. So I trained as a lawyer in London. I've done a few things, but right now I'm a full-time container terminal guy.
Great. And I may say that, on every role you get stronger in our industry,
I think so. My skin gets a little thicker every time. I get better at taking abuse.
And John, I always like to ask this question before starting the session. I will just shoot it again. So how would you define terminal operations in one word?
You told me a few days ago this was going to be the opener, and I've been stressing about it all week. Right? Like when you start thinking about container terminal operations, how can you sum up this insanity in a single word? Right? Like it's really impossible. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that both successes and failures have the same common denominator. Right? One would be a lack of, the other would be enhancement of. And that single word is teamwork. If we look at a successful container terminal, it really comes down to the people and also the different partners that the container terminal has in order to make everything flow. Right? And if all of those people and teams and enterprises are working well together, the container terminal will also work well. If there's some kind of breakdown in communication or sort of workflow between these different organizations, the container terminal is probably going to have a bad day. You're talking about labor, talking about the CHE providers, talking about the IT providers, talking about management, truck drivers. Like when you think about a container terminal and all those different parties and the roles that they play, it's like a small miracle that anything even moves from point A to point B. But the reason why it does is because of teamwork.
I fully agree. My favorite word here is complexity, but yes, I was at the part of a terminal, and teamwork is critical. Teamwork, leadership, and I may say teamwork not only internally, but also with external colleagues, because that's really, really critical, and how communication need to flow all over the organization, especially the mid-management. They got a critical role here because they need to translate from the top management to actually the guys running the show. So it's quite critical, this teamwork.
Yeah, exactly. And the mid-managers are typically also the ones who are dealing with the external vendors. So the IT suppliers like Visy, what we're typically working with, an IT manager, an ops manager, who's really into the day-to-day business, but they're not necessarily the bean counters who are, on the top floor worried about, some of those more intricate financial matters.
That's quite critical here. And, it doesn't matter if we're talking about a conventional, a semi-automated or a full automated terminal. you still have teams, and this is quite critical.
Yeah.
So John, now jumping into the hardcore questions for today. I know you had been leading the team in Visy, so it would be great if you can share a little bit more. Could you describe what is the OCR solution in such a way a kid can grab the idea here?
Yeah, so the simplest way to describe OCR is taking information from pictures. Right, so an OCR system is comprised of a bunch of different cameras for different purposes, but essentially we're taking pictures of everything that goes in or out of a terminal, whether it's by road, rail, or quay, or also during some of the interchange operations within the terminal and the yard, such as with the container handling equipment. Taking pictures, identifying an asset, and then digitizing that information and sharing it with third-party systems like the TOS. So we like to think that we're sort of the eyes and ears, more so the eyes, because we're taking pictures, digitizing information, and passing that on. So some really basic examples that I think everybody would be familiar with would be license plate recognition, right? For terminal operations, this means identifying trucks as they're coming into the terminal or as they're exiting the terminal, making sure that it's supposed to be there or it's supposed to be leaving. We can kind of expand that a little bit further. So container OCR. So we start taking images of the boxes, right? So that we get the container ID, and then we start to link information together. And this is the part where it really starts to get interesting at the application level. So let's say we're taking a picture of a truck and a box. So we're getting the license plate, we're getting the container code, and now we can start to communicate with the TOS. Okay, is this the right match? Are these assets in the right place at the right time doing the right thing? And with all of that information digitized, we can really start to see improvements in KPIs like truck turnaround times at the gate. On the quay side, we're talking about crane productivity, right? Moves per hour, these types of metrics that terminals are pretty obsessed with. And the simple digitalization of some of the data that we're getting from these pictures helps to enhance those processes.
Yeah, got your point. And I used to be a gate manager for a well-known terminal operator, and I may say that the OCR was actually my eyes, and I cannot see a single day without an OCR. But the reality is that in our industry, you can find still a lot of terminals working in a, so to say, really conventional way, and some others are state of the art. So my next question go to what are the minimum requirements to implement this type of solution in a brownfield, for example?
It comes down to what the terminal's objectives are, right? So whenever I'm talking with a terminal that maybe doesn't have this type of technology, I'd like to know what they want to get out of it. So for different terminals, this could be different things. At the most basic level, it's sort of what I already described, right? It's license plate recognition, container code ID, access management, right? Just making sure that the right trucks and cargo are coming in or going out, and just verifying that information with the TOS. But as a terminal develops and they want to do more and more automation, we actually have a really interesting situation where we can extract more and more types of data from the exact same images. So from the basic container code images that we're getting, we can get the container ID, but from the exact same images, we can extract multiple data sets. So for example, we can tell you the ISO code. We can tell you if there is a hazardous goods label. We can tell you the gross weight and the tar weight of the box. We can tell you if there is a seal or how many seals there are. We can tell you if a door on the box is open. And the latest technology that we have, which we're very proud of, is automatic damage detection. So we can actually tell you whether or not the box is damaged and where on the box it's damaged. And again, this is all digital information. So it's coming into our gate operating system, and it can be shared with third-party systems, such as the TOS, or maybe data could be sent to the M&R center. Say, hey, this box just came in, it's banged up. You can expect this coming into your workflow, or even just share that information with a third party, such as the container owner or a trucking company or something like that. But the point is that once you start to digitize this information from the OCR images, you have a lot of possibilities for automation and enhancing things like traffic flow or work processes.
Yeah, and you touched there a critical point, and what it comes to my mind is that when you're implementing this type of solutions, people and skills will be critical, because when you're evaluating not only process automation or equipment automation, the exception handling will be, especially for the gate, critical. So you share a little bit, how is this like journey for the people on the sites?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the biggest things that we do is actually make their jobs easier. They can sit in the comfort of an office. They can view everything remotely. They don't actually have to be in the traffic lanes, inhaling truck fumes, or potentially standing in harm's way. Accidents do happen at the gate area. So we actually improve safety in that sense. But then we also improve the amount of cargo that a single clerk can handle. So whereas in a more traditional operation, you might have one or two clerks per lane, right, at the gate area. With this type of technology, you can have one clerk managing perhaps an entire gate area by itself. So one clerk will manage maybe 4 lanes. Because when you start to automate this flow, the clerks only have to deal with exception handling processes. And maybe 2% could be an exception handling, maybe in some other sites it's as high as 10%. But in any case, if you think about the total number of events per day that need to be manually processed, that number is much lower than if you have a more traditional operation with clerks actually at the gate.
Yeah, and that really leads me to my next question, because the reality is that there are many benefits when we talk about these type of solutions. But at the end, it's not only about mentioning them from an operational point of view, but I may say you also need to make this financially feasible. And that's the most critical one, because that one basically will be the one that will support the final decision. Could you share what will be like the main benefit here from a financial point of view?
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to being able to do more with less. Right. So what we're trying to do here is increase the terminal's ability to do business, right? Specifically at the gate area, or at the quay or whatever, right? So in a case of key crane OCR, terminals can process the ships much faster with an automated OCR system than they would with a manual system, right? And the cost of each move gets drastically reduced, right? If we're talking about on the gate side, again, terminals are obsessed with metrics, as you know. But we reduce the cost of handling every single box at the gate area. Even inside the yard with some of our applications like spreader OCR, by automating the box ID and linking that to the CHE without the need for a driver to go down the RDT and start clicking on things, we're improving the productivity of that CHE. We're eliminating wrong moves that cost time and money. And again, there's a safety factor. So how do you quantify the safety factor? But all of these things play into what an OCR system can do for the terminal from a financial perspective.
Yeah, got your point. And I am also supporting customers on this automation and eco-efficiency journey. But at the end, one critical point here is that when we reach the business case. And personally, I believe that for this type of solution you are mentioning, the ROI should be quite fast. But can you share some thoughts?
Yeah, it varies from terminal to terminal, and it depends on what type of technology is involved and what sorts of challenges that terminal is facing. Oftentimes with damage inspection systems, whether it's automatic or a more traditional damage detection system, the ROI can be very fast if the terminal is experiencing a lot of damage claims or insurance claims from the container owners. In some of those cases, it's really less than 6 months. Which is pretty fast for an ROI, obviously. In other cases, it might be 12 months. 18 months is probably the limit. But it depends on what's being implemented. But certainly with these damage detection systems, it's usually very fast.
Yeah, that's quite clear. And I am asking this because sometimes people still confuse when you mention automation. You need to try to split them in process automation and equipment automation. There are a lot of benefits you can aim or achieve especially if you are investing in process automation. But John, now there are strong players out there offering this type of solutions. I even not need to mention the name because people know them. You are also included in those. But could you share what is the main difference or your main differentiator today?
Yeah, I think there are a couple. One of them is a sort of a general philosophy type standpoint, right? So we make all of our software in-house, and the software is really the core of our system. We don't make any hardware at all. We use commercial off-the-shelf hardware for all of our applications. We design and we build and things of that nature, but we're not hardware manufacturers. We're a software company. So this gives us a lot of flexibility. So from a software perspective, because we make everything in-house, including our OCR engine, it means that we can provide very flexible solutions for our customers. It also means that from an R&D standpoint, we can control sort of the path of all of the software, including finding new ways to extract interesting data sets from images, right? So this automatic damage detection system is an example of that. One of the technologies we're using with our vision technology is called a DNN, Dynamic Neural Network. And we're the first company in the industry to be using this type of technology. We've been using it since 2013, 2014, just very shortly after it was developed. So why is this interesting? This is the same technology that Facebook and Google use with their facial recognition applications. And what they have seen is that their DNNs and this type of advanced vision technology is actually faster and more accurate than a human being could ever be with these types of vision technology applications. So we're taking OCR or container operations in the same direction, that it has to be faster and more accurate than a human being could be. And we feel like we're already at that point. So next, it's what other data can we extract? So that's the example of the automatic damage detection, multiple seals on a box, different types of seal, actually classifying the type of seal that's on a box. Is it a bolt? Is it a zip tie? Really that level of detail. Then on the hardware side, we're actually always looking for ways to eliminate hardware from the systems. So we know that in talking with our customers and just general market research, that hardware infrastructure is a hassle, right? There's not only the cost of having to install it and buy it up front, there's also the support and maintenance component of it. Things break, it shuts down the operation. There are these types of problems. So with the example of license plate recognition, we have a new feature called the virtual trigger. So we don't need any external triggering. So we don't need a ground loop, we don't need a laser scanner, radar, whatever these sensors might be. But the camera and the software do all of the triggering and the image processing themselves. So again, we're reducing the hardware requirement for the system. We have some other plans as well. There's a lot of hardware that goes into a gate system, and we think some of it is redundant, and we'll have some announcements coming soon, but we're always looking to reduce hardware infrastructure for our customers, and I think that's a massive differentiator between some of the other companies that are on the market.
Yeah, I may say that's a really cool one, because as much as you can reduce this hardware, at the end that results in reducing the initial investment. So, and I may say that's the way forward.
Yeah.
And John, you had been in different terminals worldwide. Could you share what have you discovered deploying your solution, or how have been this journey, especially on the we got this COVID disruption. I don't know in which wave we are today, but we still got the impact of the COVID. Sadly, we got this situation in Europe. Now again, another lockdown in China. So, there is a huge fluctuation on demand, and at the end, all those impact terminals.
Yeah, for us, it's been sort of a couple years of creativity, right? So terminals have always been dynamic places, right? There's always a lot going on, and there are always a lot of changes. But the last 2 years have actually forced us to work differently. So because we have more of a partner model, right? We typically have local partners when we're deploying projects. It actually allowed us to still deliver everything on time, on spec, and on budget, despite the disruptions of COVID, right? Because we didn't have to send personnel from Europe necessarily to perform an installation in, let's say, Indonesia, right? That we had a local team that was able to do everything there. Because the demands of the terminals and the challenges they face over the last 2 years have gone up, right? They can't just say, okay, we don't need your technology because there's a situation. They're actually saying the opposite, like, we need your technology more than ever because of this situation. So find a way to make this happen. So for us internally, we were actually already somewhat set up to do that, but it just solidified that our project delivery approach was actually correct. That this type of flexibility and having local partners allowed us to do exactly what our customers needed them to do, given their changing business environment.
Yeah, I think this is a really critical point to mention here. And, I was part of the operator side and now as a solution provider side. But at the end, the key is that if you are starting this journey, you really need a partner.
Yeah.
And not only a partner to be there, but also to share, lesson learned, experiences on how to do things. The reality is that there is no time to reinvent a wheel in a terminal.
Right.
But John, now, many may say like, okay, this is only for greenfields, but the reality is that the greenfields are quite few out there. Most of the cases are brownfield terminals. So what do you consider are the main challenges for brownfield these days?
One of the biggest things that we're talking about with brownfields is the long-term plan. I think most terminals at this point understand that a gate operating system in OCR provides value, but they may not understand what it means to kind of the longer-term business itself and how this technology is so easily scaled, especially if at the time that we're implementing, we have a vision of where we want to be in 5 to 10 years. I think one of the things we try to communicate is that we can start with something very simple, right? And as long as we have that basic IT infrastructure in place, a database and a basic application and cameras for a few lanes, we can test what really works and what doesn't. Maybe the initial idea wasn't necessarily well thought out, or it didn't anticipate some of these changes, such as, hey, a pandemic, right? So having a solution that's truly flexible and can be scaled and can have new technologies added or even taken away as required, I think is critical. There's a terminal that we're talking with now, and they have a very good plan for the future. They know that the current gate location will be temporary, that it will only be there for 3 years, and that they're going to have to move it at another point because of some other business issues that they know are coming down the road. So having that information up front means that we can deploy technology that can be moved when needed, right? And as long as we have that database structure in place, we have quite a bit of flexibility about how to help the terminal develop, in the medium to long term as their business challenges change.
Yeah, really interesting. And John, we got viewers from the whole Americas, Europe, Middle East, Africa, Oceania, Asia, and probably they will be also watching this session. And have you seen any difference when it comes to deploying this solution according to the region?
I wouldn't say any major differences from region to region. I think each region has its own sort of unique requirements, right? So the labor costs are different, in different parts of the world. So that may affect the way that, the system provides value. And there may be some differences in terms of some of the features that are required. Some terminals might have an M&R center, others don't. So there need to be some site-specific considerations. Even within the same port, two terminals might have different ways of working. But I think when we have a proper planning session, when we have that initial workshop to go through what it is that they really want to get out of the system, and we start working through the processes, right? So, pages and pages of flow diagrams, making sure that every scenario is being captured. I think, again, it comes back to this teamwork common denominator, that as long as we're doing that teamwork up front and setting the tone for how this project needs to go and what they want to get out of it, then there aren't major differences in that sense.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you mentioned this, and I really love this topic, especially when it comes to any type of automation. I'm glad you mentioned it, that you really need to sit down with the different teams. If there is no process, you need to create the process, because basically you need to understand your way of working first, and then you need to identify how goods look like, and if it makes sense from a financial, environmental, or operational view. So it's really critical, that point you mentioned. John, I am passionate about this one. We can spend all day long here, but I know you're quite busy. So let's try to wrap up this one. And as a final point here, what will be your message for worldwide colleagues out there in the terminals?
Planning. That's probably what it comes down to. Planning and teamwork. That, coming back to how we started this conversation, a terminal will fail or succeed based on how the teamwork happens at that particular facility. And I think technology vendors need to take a lot of responsibility in that process, and understanding what the teamwork is in that environment and how the technology plays into it.
Great message, John. And it was awesome to have you here today. As I told you, every time we got the time to have a chat, you're always welcome to this type of session, and I am open to hear your latest thoughts and lessons learned. So let's hope to see you on a future session here.
Perfect, thanks. Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks again for inviting me. I'm really glad we had this time, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Great, thanks, John.
Cool, take care. Thanks. Bye, Chris.